Hi everyone. Okay, so it's story time. I picked one of the stories that my girls loved the most when they were growing up. All four of them loved this book. And this book is about dinosaurs. It's got this dinosaur in it. Do you know what that is? Tyrannosaurus. And he likes to eat meat. Do you know what you call an animal that likes to eat meat? Good, a carnivore. Then there was this one. This is a duck-billed dinosaur. It's got a funny shaped mouth like a duck. And he only eats vegetables and plants. Do you know what he's called? Good, herbivore. And then this one, the last one, it's a little dinosaur. There's a compognathus. Very do you know, I can't say it. Can you find out what this little dinosaur's called? Very, very little. And I don't know if it's a herbivore or if it's a carnivore. Or what do you call something that can be both? Can't remember that either. It's been 3 weeks since I've been in school. This is not good. I'm forgetting everything. Right, let's have a look at this book. So this book is by Julia Donaldson and it's called Tyrannosaurus Drip. Now, I love this book because I like the words that Julia uses, but I also love the illustrations that David Roberts does as well. So if you have a look how he's interpreted what the little duckbill looks like and how he's interpreted what the Tyrannosauruses look like. And if I open up the book, I can show you how he's drawn the little blue dinosaur as well. There's a little blue dinosaur there. Okay, can you see? I wonder what he's doing. He looks a bit naughty, doesn't he? Oh, his name's in this book. Okay, so that type of dinosaur is called a Compsognathus. Okay, Compsognathus. But we could call it Comp for short. It's easier. Right, so let's have a look at this book. And I'll just show you some of the illustrations. Just look at that page there. Look at the illustrations that this man is able to do. Beautiful, isn't it? He does lots of lovely lines and lovely curvy illustrations. So let's have a look at this brilliant book. Tyrannosaurus Drip. Ooh, do you know what drip means? Drip means someone who's a bit silly, not very clever. It's not a very nice thing to say, really, is it? Okay, Tyrannosaurus Drip. In a swamp besides a river, where the land was thick with veg, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who roamed the water's edge. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. Now, across the rushy river, on a hill the other side, lived a mean Tyrannosaurus with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duckbill dinosaur!" But the two Tyrannosauruses, so grisly, mean and grim, couldn't catch the duckbill dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered, "Down with water!" And they muttered, "Down with wet!" And they muttered, "What a shame that bridges haven't been invented yet." Now, a little Compsognathus, but for short, we'll call her Comp, found a duckbill egg and stole it from the nest beside the swamp. And she swam with it, and ran with it, and murmured, "Clever me!" And won't the baby Comps be thrilled with duckbill egg for tea? She dropped the egg in terror and went rushing for her life from the mean Tyrannosaurus and his grim and grisly wife. And the duck-billed egg went rolling, and at last it came to rest in, of all unlikely places, the Tyrannosaurus nest. Now, the mother T had great big jaws and great enormous legs, but her brain was rather little, and she couldn't count her eggs. And she sang, "Hatcha, my terrors, with your scaly little tails, and your spiky little toothies, and your scary little nails." Out hatched baby 1 and 2 as perfect as could be. But Mother T was horrified by baby number 3, and she grumbled, "He looks weedy." And she grumbled, "He looks weak." And she grumbled, "What long arms! And look, his mouth is like a beak." "He just needs feeding up," said Dad, and gave the babe some meat. The first 2 gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, "I'm really sorry." And he said, "I simply can't." And he said, "This meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant." "A plant?" yelled Mum in horror, and Dad said, "Get a grip." His sisters found a name for him, "Tyrannosaurus Drip." And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duckbill dinosaur!" Poor Tyrannosaurus Drip tried hard to sing along, but the others yelled, "You silly Drip, you've got the words all wrong." For he hooted, "Down with hunting!" And he hooted, "Down with war!" And he hooted, "Down with bellyfuls of duck-bill dinosaur!" Drip's sisters soon grew big enough to hunt with Dad and Mum, but they turned on Drip and told him, "You're not fierce enough to come." And he cried, "They've gone without me." And he cried, "Alack a day." And he cried, "This doesn't feel like home. I'm going to run away." So he ran off to the river, where he saw a lovely sight, a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs, all hooting with delight. And they hooted, "Up with rivers!" And they hooted, "Up with reeds!" And they hooted, "Up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds!" And he stood there on the bank. A sudden urge took hold of him, and he jumped into the water and discovered he could swim. And the duckbills came to greet him by the rushy river's edge, and they hooted, "Nice to see you!" And they hooted, "Have some veg!" And Drip, who was delighted that they hadn't run away, ate bellyfuls of water weeds and played with them all day. Then he gazed into the river, and he asked them, Who is that creature in the water?" And they laughed and said, "It's you." Oh, of course, look, it's his reflection, isn't it? He's probably never seen his reflection before. That night, the lightning crackled and a storm blew down a tree, and it fell across the river, and the T's cried out, "Yippee!" And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" And they shouted, "Up with war!" And they shouted, Up with bellyfuls of duckbill dinosaur. Drip's sisters stepped onto the bridge, but then began to frown. For there in front of them stood Drip, who yelled, "Look out! Look down!" And they looked into the water, and they each let out a yelp. And one cried, "Water monsters!" And the other one cried, "Help!" Their mother scolded, "Nonsense!" And she joined them on the tree. Then she looked into the water and exclaimed, "Good gracious me!" The three of them stood trembling, and Dad said, "Get a grip. You're all of you as drippy as Tyrannosaurus Drip." He strode onto the bridge and scoffed, "Ha ha! I'll bet is nothing there." Then he looked into the water and jumped into the air. Look, he's seen his reflection as well. And how the duckbills hooted when he landed with a crash. And the tree bridge broke, and 4 Tyrannosauruses went splash. And spluttering and clinging to the branches of the tree, they went whooshing down a waterfall and all the way to sea. And the duckbills hooted happily. They hooted, "Hip, hip, hip! Hooray for heroic, one and only Duck-Bill Drip!" They've called him Drip. Oh, but they've done it in a nice way. Duck-Bill Drip. He's a very clever duckbill, wasn't he? He was clever because he learnt something and then he used that knowledge to help him to be able to do something else. So, do you remember, what did he learn? He learnt that what he could see in the water was not a monster, but was his good reflection. Okay? Like when you look in a mirror, you can see yourself. Okay? You can see a mirror image. When you look in water and is a little bit distorted, you're seeing your reflection in the water. Now, he remembered that, so when his sisters were coming along the branch, he knew that they would never have seen their reflection because they wouldn't have been over the river before. And so when they saw their reflection, their image that was wobbling around in the water, they thought it was a water monster as well, didn't they? And so that made them scared. It made Mum scared. It made Dad scared. And they all fell into the water with a great big splash. So he learned something and then he used that knowledge later on. And that's what we try and do in school, isn't it? We learn things and we try and remember those things so that we can use them again. So I hope you enjoyed that story by Julia Donaldson, and I hope you enjoyed the artwork by David Roberts.